In this session, I'll be taking you through the Mitre Att&Ck framework. So, Mitre Att&Ck framework is a knowledge base of adversary behaviors created from real-world observations of real adversaries, and it's open source and globally accessible, and it's free. You can use it whether you're a student, a cybersecurity researcher, or as an organization. And it's also community-driven, meaning that the project is supported by the community, and people can also do their contribution on the Mitre Att&Ck framework. So, looking at an adversary's life cycle. So, an adversary's life cycle begins at if an adversary needs to compromise a particular target. The first thing they need to do is to gather information about the target, which is their recon, and also after gathering information, they need to weaponize or use the information they have gathered in order to deliver their attacks. And after delivering the attack, they also figure out how to exploit the target, take control over the systems, and maybe execute their malwares or programs, and figure out how they can maintain access in that particular system. So some of the attack use cases is attack can be used in detection. So attack can be used to detect an intrusion by mapping a particular attack and understanding how a particular attack is initiated, so that defenders can know how to detect a particular attack. And also in threat intelligence, whereby people understand the different behaviors of a particular adversary and how they perform their techniques and tactics in exploiting a target. Another use case of attack is in assessment and engineering. Assessment and engineering is whereby you compare different attacks and you understand how the basics of how the exploitation is done by the attackers. And the final thing that we will also do a demonstration in this video is the adversary emulation, or the red teaming. In other words, this is whereby you create an attacker scenario and you try to see whether the defenders of your organization or the security can detect the techniques used by the adversaries or the red team. The other thing is having known all this Att&Ck, how can we use it, and how can we actually use it in the organization, whether the organization is big or whether you're using it as an individual. So some of the use cases is in detection, assessment and engineering, and threat intelligence, and also in adversary emulation. So in detection, this is whereby the Att&Ck, the coverage is consistent, whereby you're beginning with one tactic and we are expanding on more other tactics that are being used by the adversary, and looking how we can be able to detect a particular attack. And basically, we always know that the detection can never be 100% sure. So that's why there's need for the attack framework and some adversary emulation. So in threat intelligence, this is whereby we use the adversary's behaviors, so that the defenders can be able to understand how the particular threat actors are using, and the particular ways that they are using to compromise the systems and gain access to sensitive information or the network of an organization. So the other thing is, if you're doing threat intelligence, you need to pick an existing attack group. Maybe, for example, you may take like APT29 or the Cobalt group. So you know that the Cobalt group, the first technique they use to do the access is by sending a spear phishing attachment. So in this way, you can understand how different attackers use different methods to make the initial access into the network. The other thing is, if you've understood a particular technique that is used by an attacker, how do you map that to your intelligence by using the Att&Ck? And to begin with, how do you store the intelligence that you've gathered, and how do you begin understanding, breaking down a particular tactic into more techniques, and understanding how the attacker makes his transition from one technique to another. The other thing is mapping the techniques. So if you know that a particular technique might have more than one way to execute it, or rather a particular tactic might have more than one techniques. So if it's gaining access, the adversary might use more than one techniques to gain access, and understanding this enables you to monitor how you're going to detect a particular indicator of compromise or intrusion in the network. The other thing is, after gathering the information about a particular attack group and understanding how you're going to emulate or try to understand how to detect a particular threat, the thing you also need to do is that you also need to understand and use your intel that you have gathered to educate your teams, the red team and both the blue team, so that if a particular technique is being used, you need also to make sure that the red team, both the red team and the blue team, understand that you are using a particular technique and how they can mitigate that technique and how they can use that information to improve the security posture of an organization. The other thing is that you can take a look at some of the top 20 techniques of attack and group, and these techniques may also vary from other sites and maybe other organizations, depending on the research and the information that you have. So these are some of the top 20 techniques, and these techniques may vary, and also you can also do a research on the same, because there are different databases of adversaries, techniques and tactics. Like also this Att&Ck may vary from the cyber kill chain, which is a similar information about adversary behaviors. So the other thing is doing an adversary emulation or doing the red teaming. So red teaming is whereby you organize your organization security into the defenders and attackers. So what the red team is going to do basically is they are going to emulate a particular attack, and they're going to try to attack the network or the systems in order to identify the gaps in the network or the system. And the main aim of the adversary emulation is to figure out where you need improvement in the network or the organization. The other thing is, if you're conducting an adversary emulation and maybe you don't have a bigger group or an organization, there are also some automated red team emulation programs that you can use. And for this case, I'll be using Caldera, and there are also other red team emulation software that you can use. And they are basically, most of them are free and they are open source. So the main aim of using the attack to mature the red team is having chosen a different attack technique every week and making your team to go through the same technique to analyze them and let them have a plan for doing the emulation and the attacks, and coming up with more resolutions on how they can improve the security posture and the gaps that they have figured out. So this basically the emulation plan that you can pick up. The first thing is the first thing is gathering the intelligence and about the particular target, and there are a few steps that you can also do that, and also until you begin doing the enumeration and you also beginning with the attacking. That's the steps that can be required, and the most basic steps of doing that. There are also some resources on the same, and I'll also share them in the links. So the final takeaways for this session is that attack can help you to create a threat-informed defense, no matter if you're a beginner or your organization is a big and you have expert in your organization, because you can be able to focus on these 4 use cases: the detection, assessment, and engineering, in threat intelligence, and also the adversary emulation. So I'll be showing you how to do the threat emulation by using the Caldera software. So I've already installed the Caldera, and I'll be logging into the terminal and taking you through some of the most crucial parts. So the interface has some parts. Let's focus on the agent. So this is the agent. By saying the agent, if you want to deploy an agent, so you'll be deploying the host or the machine that you're going to use to do the emulation or the attacks. So in this case, you can either choose the default agent, and you also select the platform that you're targeting or the operating system that you'll be focusing on attacking. So you can use the Darwin option for the Mac, Linux, and also Windows if you're using a Windows server or any other. And there are also methods on how you can initiate the connection to that machine, and make sure that the connection is already configured so that you can be able to access that machine and start doing the attacks and also the enumeration. And the other thing is, if you are picking an adversary, you have to select the adversary that you want to emulate, because you're doing a red team test. So we can have a look at some of the adversaries. You can look on the Windows one, and you can see the capabilities of the adversary. So the adversary in our case can collect ARP details, and they can do some NS lookup, and basically this is the first thing for the enumeration. And you can, after selecting the adversary that you want to enumerate, you can click on save, so that everything that the particular procedures that the adversary used can be initiated, and in case you are launching the attack, so that everything that you have selected can be initiated, and you can be able to make an attack that mimics the exactly adversary that you have. So you can click on save, and you can see that the adversary is saved. So the other thing is that when you've already initiated the attack or the adversary you want to emulate while doing this red team testing, you have also to make sure that you are monitoring the activities that are being done by the adversaries using your Splunk Enterprise or any other SIEM that you have. So by doing that, you'll be able to make sure that you understand how the adversary is making his moves, and how you can try to mitigate those moves, and whether you can detect anything that is being done by the adversary. So after doing that, you can select on the monitoring console. This is whereby you can see any activity that is being done by the adversary or anyone in that particular network. So I have mapped the Splunk Enterprise to my Windows machine. So in case the adversary attack was initiated, we can have a look at whatever activities that are being done. If there is event processing issues, someone trying to connect, we can make some queries and see if we can detect any indicator of compromise. And by also understanding different queries, that can also enable us to know a particular resource is being used, or a particular event has just been started, or there's a particular program that has been started and it's not normal for the program to be started. So that's it for this session, and hope you have learned something.